Hey everyone, HardlyBriefDan here with episode 47 of the Unity Make an RPG series. We left off last time getting the status effects up and running, or at least a basic system of status effects in our turn-based combat system, and we're going to go ahead and continue working on that. There's a few things we need to do, or that are left to do in the state machine here, namely getting our critical strike and our armor formulas down. You can see here I'm in the battle calculation script. I'll go ahead and zoom in. Right now we're calculating our total player damage, which right now is just our ability damage and our status effect damage, which we calculate down here. We worked a lot last time on getting that implemented and kind of changing up how we did a few things. But basically, before we go ahead and complete the turn, which I know it's pretty surprising we haven't even done yet, before we get to the enemy, we need to go ahead and add a few more things, and that's like how you can deal with. We'll go ahead and do critical strike damage. So how we're going to deal with critical strike damage, and I think we're going to go ahead and add a percentage chance for each ability in our in the actual ability. So in the base ability, there will be a number that is the percent chance of that ability being able to crit, and then we'll go ahead and use that based on our player's luck as well. It'll probably start overpowered because the luck will start pretty overpowered because I'm not going to create a complicated formula based on level and stuff, most likely. But you guys can go ahead and adjust it and kind of see how it all works together and how to use your stats and stuff to go ahead and calculate the crit damage. But we also have weapon damage, which we're not going to include right now because we haven't even created an item with the weapon yet. And then armor. We'll probably look into that a little bit, but we might just do critical. I think we'll just do critical strike now because we have our move and our status effect damage. We'll probably do crit, and then we'll go ahead and jump into completing the turn in the next video and kind of talking about AI a little bit. So hope that'll be in the next video, but today we're going to work on critical strike. So what we need to do is I'll go ahead and show or briefly discuss what we did last time with our stat calculations and our status effect here. In our status effect, we have this battle state where we figure out whether or not we have a status effect and whether or not it applies to the player. And this script or class is also going to be used to determine whether or not the status effect stays on. So if we use another status effect, we have to remember that we already have one on there, so we got to figure out whether or not we're going to add to them, which I said that we would, or are we going to, and then how long is that going to stay, like how long is that one going to last, how many turns is that going to last, and we'll figure all that out once we move on to the turns. But this is the script that we wrote last time, and we got it running up, we got it working with our status effect damage here in our battle calculation script. So like I said, we're going to go ahead and work on critical strike. What we need to do first is go into Unity. I'm in our project where we've been for the whole time, and I'm going to go ahead and open up our base ability here. Base ability, I'm going to go ahead and open up attack ability and sword slash, which are the two abilities that I've created so far. Again, if you want to go ahead and create a system that's different for doing abilities, by all means go ahead. So I'm in the base ability C# class right now, and I'm going to go ahead and add a variable that's going to be a private variable. I'll do the private one first. I'll try to do it as quickly as I can. So we'll say private int, and this is going to be our ability. We'll call it ability crit chance. Okay, and this is just going to be a number. Oh goodness, what happened? Ability crit chance. Sorry if the keyboard's making noise in the mic. Apologize. I'm still working out. I had a mic boom and it broke. Or the desk can't hold it, so I'm going to have to figure out a better way to support the mic and get rid of the noise from the keyboard. I don't like hearing that vibration, so apologize if that's annoying. I'll go ahead and try to fix that as soon as I can. But here we have this ability crit chance, which I'm going to go ahead and copy one of these public getters and setters that has an integer value, and I'm going to Control V to paste. I'm going to change the name here. Instead of ability power, I'm going to make it ability crit chance. Go ahead and paste that in. Change the A to capital A so we don't get that Stack Overflow error again, because we definitely don't want that, because I'll crash all your Unities again, which again I apologize for. But here we go, we added the ability crit chance in our attack ability. I'm going to go ahead and start adding that. So we're going to go ability crit chance. Let's see, crit chance, which is right there, and I'm going to go ahead and set this one equal to 10. actually 5. I want it to be like 5%. It doesn't need to be super high for this one. It's up to you. You know, maybe you don't want to handle it this way. Maybe you want all abilities to have a chance, the equal chance. You know, it depends on really, like I said before, this is the chance for you to kind of change up how you want to do everything. But anyways, we have ability crit chance here. I'm going to go ahead and copy this, and I'm going to go into our / ability. I'm going to go ahead and add it. And I'm going to make this to be a 75% chance. And actually, we'll go ahead and make it 85. And this is just so that we can test, really. You know, we're not balancing right now, so I just want to see if this works, right? We want to see it fail, but we also wanted to see it succeed. So now that we've added that crit chance, I'm checking Unity, make sure we don't have any errors, and we don't, so that's good. I'm going to go ahead and I can actually exit out of our base ability, our attack ability, and our sword / ability classes, and we can go ahead and jump into our crit chance. So all the calculations can be done within our battle calculation script. We are going to have to work within our stat calculations class as well, so you might want to have both those open. But we're going to go ahead and create a private function down here, or method, and it's going to be private. We're going to go ahead and return a float value for now, and it's going to be calculate critical strike damage is what we'll call it. It's going to go ahead and take a base ability, which is going to be our used ability that we've been using this whole time. And one thing I failed to mention that I could go ahead and mention now is if you don't want to have this one, like this ability here that keeps being passed around, you can call, basically in this, when we call this function, we can go ahead and create a instance of it and just use it throughout. And maybe we'll go ahead and change that over, because I don't know, I'm not really sure if continually passing the same thing around takes a lot of time or not. Like deep down, like when the game compiles, it's probably poor coding practice what we're doing right now, but we'll look at that later. Maybe if one of you guys know, go ahead and leave it in the comment. We can kind of figure it out. But anyways, we've created this method here. I'm going to go ahead and jump down and just press enter a whole bunch of times so we don't have to scroll all the way down like that. But what we need to do is go ahead and create a private float variable, and this is going to be total crit strike damage, and we're going to go ahead and add this variable into our total player damage already. So I'm just going to go ahead and add it here at the end. I'm going to say total crit strike damage, and I'm actually going to make this an integer for now. Yeah, and we're going to go ahead and return it in. I think we're going to do all of our rounding inside. Yeah. Okay. So basically, in reality, this is going to return here most likely. I'm not sure how I want to do that yet, but we'll figure it out. So we have our calculate critical strike damage now. We need to go ahead and probably create another formula or formula here or method that's going to be our formula for figuring out whether or not we had a critical hit. So we'll go ahead and do a private int. Private void. We're not going to return anything, I don't think. And this is going to be decide if ability critically hit. Right? And this is going to take a base ability. Actually, let's do that now. Let's go ahead and change this up. So at the top here, I'm going to go ahead and add a private variable. It's going to be a base ability type, and we're going to call this player used ability. So as soon as we go ahead and call this calculate total player damage, we're going to set this used ability here that we send it equal to that. So we no longer have to send this variable everywhere. It's going to be private to this battle calculations class, so we can use it everywhere. And I just think, I meant to do that. I think this is a better practice actually than continually sending information, the same ability everywhere, when we can just set it to something in this class and we can use it everywhere. So instead of receiving this ability down here, we're going to go ahead and delete that. We don't need that now. So what we need to do if decide ability critically hit is look at that ability. So what we can go ahead and do a few things. We can create a random temporary variable. So we'll go int random temp is going to be equal to random dot range. Again, this is like our roll, so we're going to go from 0 to 101. which is really which is, excuse me, 1 to 101, which is really a roll, if you will, rolling like 100-side dice, and it's going to land on a value between 1 and 100. And we're going to use this random temp and compare it to our used ability critical strike chance. So we're going to go ahead and say if our random temp variable is less than our used, what was it? Our player used ability dot crit chance here. So if it's less than, we're going to say less than or equal to, right? So in our case, we have an 85% chance of getting a critical strike chance with a critical strike with our sword slash, right? So what we want to do is say, well, let's look at that crit strike chance. Let's roll a value. If that random range, if that value is less than or equal to that, so if it's between 1 and 85, or 1 to 86, but equal to 85, then we know we've critically striked. So then we can go ahead and do some calculations. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and look at that. And we don't really need a whole function for this, but we're going to go ahead and do that. So what we'll do is going to return a bool, actually. And so if we do crit, we're going to go ahead and say return true, like that. And if we don't, then we'll go say else, excuse my phone, we're going to go ahead and say return false. So again, this is just a check. We're saying, hey, did we critically strike? If so, let's tell the program that we did, and now we can go ahead and calculate our crit strike damage. And I just remembered I actually wanted to add another value to our base ability, which I think will add some more stuff to it. Again, you don't have to add all this stuff. It's just going to make it. It's up to you. You know, it's your game, your design. And I'm sorry I keep jumping back and forth here. But go ahead and open up our attack ability, or base ability, and sword slash, depending on however many you have. And I'm actually going to add one more integer value. And this is going to be a multiplier. So we're actually going to call it ability crit modifier here. And this modifier, I'm going to go ahead and copy the public integer, getter, and setter again. And this modifier here is going to be the value of which we look at to determine how hard the ability crits. So what I mean by this, your player can have just a base crit damage percentage. So if your game has a stat, if your design has a stat that just directly modifies how hard your abilities do critical damage, then you probably don't need this stat. But let's say you want to have it so each of your ability has a chance to have its own ability crit modifier, meaning if this ability crits, it can modify the damage independently. Then this is what you could do, and we'll probably end up doing both because, you know, why not? We have that was it agility, which is or overpower, excuse me, which is our stat that basically says how much our chance we have to crit. We can also say, what if we do overpower and luck combined is equal to an added modifier of how hard we crit plus the ability crit itself, ability crit modifier itself. And I'll go ahead and explain that a little bit more in just a second if you don't understand. But here I'm in base ability. I've added this ability crit modifier variable. I'm going to go in sword slash because it's the ability we're working with right now. I'm going to go ahead and add a crit modifier. I'm going to equal this to 120. Now remember, I'm going to go ahead and put a comment here, and this is I'm using this as percentage. Using as percent. Actually, you know, we're not going to do that. Go ahead and in our base ability, which I accidentally closed, or which I closed already, we're going to go ahead and make this a float. So crit modifier float. Just go down here and change it to a float. Pretty easy. I'm going to keep it open just in case. And I'm actually going to change this to 1.2. So all I have to do is call this and say, hey, let's multiply our crit modifier, our crit damage by the modifier itself, right? Which is 1.2. So you know, an extra 20% here. So I'll go ahead and do that, and then we'll go ahead and jump back into stack or battle calculations. So here we have this decide if ability critically hit. If it returns true, we did critically hit. I'm going to go ahead and make a comment here. We'll say we did critically hit. And then down here, I'll go ahead and do the same thing. We did did not critically hit, right? So this is just going to tell us if we did. So we can go ahead and do an if statement here and call it. Say if this returns true, then we want to do this. If not, just break or return. So we'll go ahead and say if decide if the ability critically hit is true, right? If we leave it empty like this or just with its base parentheses, then it's saying if this is true. So if we call this function, if it returns true, then we know we critically hit, and we need to calculate some stat damage. Which in this case, we can go ahead and say total critical strike damage. I'm going to go ahead and copy that variable, paste it down here. It's going to be equal to what? Well, what do we want this to be equal to? And again, what I'm thinking is we'll just grab our ability damage, which we've already calculated, which is total ability damage here. We can grab that and multiply that by our modifier. So we can say total crit damage is going to be our ability, right? Or our total, excuse me, is going to be our player used ability dot crit modifier, which is at 1.2 times our total ability power damage. Now let me explain what this is doing. It's pretty simple. We calculate this total used ability damage, which comes from our function, our method or private method called calculate ability damage, and we're going to go ahead and send that, or we're going to go ahead and use this variable, and we're going to multiply it by our modifier. So what we're going to do is the value we're going to return here is going to be 20% or 1.2 times this. So, right, it's going to, or 120%, excuse me, of the value, and we're going to go ahead and add it to our ability. I don't know why I kept saying 20%, but we're basically, it's 1.2 times the ability power. So power damage. So if this is 5, we're going to get 5 times, plus 5, was it 5 point, I can't think. Excuse me, 6. It would be 6. 20% of 5 is 2. Okay. Or 1. All right. So, sorry. But anyways, so if this is 100, if our total ability power damage ends up being 100, we're going to get 120% of that, which is 1.2, right? So we'll get we'll go ahead and get an extra 120 damage out of this, which is a lot, but it's a lot right now because we haven't tuned any of the stats really, but that's where it's going to come in later. We just want to get up, we want the systems up and running first. So we got this now, we went ahead and calculated it, and we're going to go ahead and return this value. So really, all we have to do is down here is go ahead and copy this function, and instead of using this value, we can continue what we were doing up here and just call the function itself. So what's going to happen is when we perform a move, / for instance, we're going to go ahead and calculate, we're going to enter this, calculate total player damage, right? Or actually, let's start at the turn-based combat state machine, work through it all, and it will hopefully come together. So what we're doing is we're preparing our battle, right? It's our choice, so we're going to choose a move. We choose a move, and we jump down here, and we do the status effect check. We try to add the status effect. If we do add it, then we're going to go ahead, or if we do or don't, it's going to either add damage or do nothing. At that point, we're going to go ahead and jump into our calculate total player damage, which is where we're at now. Doing that, we're looking at our used ability. We're going to calculate the ability damage first, and then once we do that, we're going to go ahead and calculate our after we do that, we're going to go ahead and calculate our total player damage, which I actually see a problem. Well, not really a problem. We're probably going to rework this little formula here just to make it a little easier to read. But basically, we have the total player damage, and we've implemented these two private methods here. I'm going to go ahead and add a debug statement above these, or above the one, so that we know when we've actually critically hit. And I'm going to say crit. Crit. We'll just say crit, exclamation point. So basically, when we do this roll and we check to see if we've critically hit, we're going to go ahead and do it here. So we know to look for the damage. I'm going to go ahead and actually do a debug.log, and we're going to say we want our total critical strike damage. So it should be 0 if nothing happens, hopefully. And actually, just to make sure it's 0 every time, like we're gonna go ahead and set it equal to 0. Total crit strike damage equal to 0. So basically, what it's gonna do is this is gonna negate all previous damage. We're gonna make sure that it's gone. Okay, and actually we can do that. I don't want to do it there. We'll go ahead and do it in this function right here. We'll set it equal to 0 first, resetting it, and then we'll go ahead and add it. So I'm going to jump into our Unity, and it looks like we have a couple problems. Cannot convert method group to delegate bool. Oh, I forgot to put my parentheses in there to call a function. There we go. And we cannot explicitly vote. Do an int. Like that. I'm just casting this as an integer to make sure that it so we can return an int, and that looks like it should be it. Oh, not all code paths can return a value. That's because down here, it looks like, I'll go ahead and double check, but it's because this function, oh, no. We'll say else return. We'll go ahead and say return total damage, player critical strike damage is equal to 0. And actually, yeah, well, we'll just do that. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and shift tab all these over to kind of make it look a little bit better visually, easier to read. Control S to save. That should get all of our errors hopefully, and it did. So I'm gonna go ahead and make sure I'm in the scene that I've been working in, which is just called tests. I tend to make a whole bunch of different scenes. It's probably not the best way to organize everything, but that's what we were working our GUI in. So we're in player choice now. I'm going to go ahead and hit // and we're going to go ahead and look and see what happens. So it looks like we've critted, or we have crit, excuse me. I'm going to go up and look exactly right where it happened. And I'm in the console here, and these are all of our debug statements. So let's see. Hopefully I can find it here in a second. There's a lot of player choices. Let's see. There we go. All right. So we've added the status effect. Here is our, we can go ahead and look. This is our random temporary value. We've calculated our damage. Let's see. What's the 8 is the status effect. And 120 here is our damage. It looks like total ability damage. 0 is what? Our total crit strike damage is 0. Now that's interesting. So we need to look at, we need to figure out why. Why is, let's see. We know we crit. It says right here oh, here we go. Here's the actual. Well, that's weird. It didn't include it. It just included it late. I wonder why that is. You can see here that we've calculated the 120% of our damage, or we multiplied it by 1.2, and then this is actual our total hit. So we hit with a critical strike of 264 damage, which really isn't that bad. It's pretty high, but you can always change the way you calculate stats, right? So it's not too big of a deal. So here it worked. I'm gonna go ahead and press play again, hit // see if we crit, and we did. It's 274. It should be basically the same. We haven't really added any variance to the abilities. What you can do, actually, let's talk about that in a minute. If you want to add some randomness to your numbers, you can go ahead and create a modifier in your battle calculations here. Let's call it a private, let's say float, I guess, and we'll say damage. Let's say damage difference. I don't like difference modifier, I guess. So basically, we can go ahead and set this equal to like 0.05. Let's say 0.05. Goodness, like that. And what you could do is this is like 5%. Let's say 5% here. This is a comment, and I'm gonna go ahead and debug these, or comment out these debug statements, and we're gonna go ahead and look at our total player damage. And before we send it back out, we want to go ahead and do total player damage. It's going to be equal to total player damage plus a randomness, a random variable. So really what you can do is go total player damage is equals to random dot range of what? Well, we need a min and max. So what we're going to do is do total player damage times, right? So times our damage difference modifier. So damage difference modifier is our min, and we're going to do just copy the same thing. Total player damage times our damage difference modifier. Damage difference modifier. All right, so now you're wondering, well, that's the same exact thing. How's it different? Well, we're going to go ahead and put a little minus sign here. Put this in parentheses just to make sure that we get it. And what this is going to do, it's going to either subtract. So it's going to choose a random value of 5% of less than our total damage or 5% greater. And then we're going to go ahead and add it to our total player damage. And I'm going to go ahead and cast this whole thing as an integer. So I'm doing an int and all this in parentheses again. And now, when we go ahead and click /, we should see a 5% variance in our abilities. You might hate this idea, because I know a lot of people hate RNG or dislike it. But you know, I think this adds a little bit of difference into the spell. So here, you can see we crit. Oh, I think I see the problem here is just continually calculating the damage. Yeah, that's what it is. So I'm actually going to go ahead and hold play, and you can actually see it's between the critting and non-critting and the difference. So we're getting like between 286, it looked like, all the way down to like 200 and I think that's what I saw, 87, 264, 261. I'm going to go ahead and end the video here. And sorry for the cut. I had to make a couple cuts there. Sorry about that. But basically what we've done today is we've added a damage difference modifier here right at the end, which you could change. You can make this, 3%, 5%, 100%, maybe you want some really crazy numbers. I don't know. It's really up to you, but I just want to show you that's how you can add some variance, which is probably better. I'm going to actually change that from difference to variance. That's the word I was looking for. Variance, right? Let's go ahead and copy that and then paste it in to change it. Control to save. So we've added some variance and we've added our critical strike percentage and damage. So what we've done is we added two new properties to our base ability, and those are critical strike chance and critical strike modifier. And we're looking at that chance and saying, hey, is our ability, we're looking at the chance and saying, hey, did we crit using a random variable here, which is like a dice roll. We're saying, did we crit? If we did, then we're gonna use that modifier and go ahead and calculate, and then modify it, multiply it by our total ability power damage, and then return that value. So in the next video, what we're gonna do is continue working on this. We're gonna end our turn, and we're gonna see what happens. Either we're gonna start with enemy AI, or we're gonna jump in and come back to the player turn. Just kind of skip the enemy for now. Most likely, I'm not sure exactly what we'll do yet, but you can look forward to one of those. Both of those will be out as soon as I can. But anyways, hope you liked the video. Hope you learned something. Please like, subscribe, comment. Feedback is great. I'm extremely excited that the community's reached 1,000 subscribers, or over 1,000 subscribers now. It's awesome. Super happy, super excited to what's to come, and I'll talk to you guys next time.